Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of City on a Hill. Great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, let's focus on Jackie. Obviously, we got him working at a bar, which obviously your boy DeCourcy can't help but, oh, how the mighty have fallen. He's like, no. I'm fine. I don't even need the job. Like, this is, dealing with Karen all last season. No, I'm good. I'm better. This is actually a promotion. It's like, yeah, sure. Doing whatever he can to convince himself, because he loved being a cop, because at some point, yes, he was actually a good person, but he lost himself along the way. He loved the power of the position. Once again, his stories that always kind of like berate people with. Like, he liked that power in that position, and now it's kind of all whittled away, and you're kind of just a nobody. Like, being a cop, being an FBI agent in particular, it filled that void inside of yourself. I mean, even later on, Ginny talks about it. Yeah, we're both from, like, the fucked up father club of just kind of like, yeah, our dads are kind of, like, screwed up, and we are screwed up because of it. He also had that offhanded comment to DeCourcy where he was like, yeah, because he was like, oh, you want to act as, like, a investigator for, like, the DA's office or something. Like, he's like, wait, you can really do something? He's like, fuck no, I'm not going to give you that job or whatever. And he's like, well, to be fair, anyone working for you ends up dead. And DeCourcy did not like that. I can only assume that's in reference to Hank. But still, I was like, yeah, that's a low blow. But speaking of Jenny, she wants nothing to do with the state that Jackie's been in. I don't know if they've explained, like, I don't think they've made it clear, like, how much time has passed. It's been probably a decent amount of time, but yeah. I think Jackie said, like, the past year I had to deal with Shimizu, so I'm like, I don't know if it's actually been a full-blown year or, like, what that's in correlation to, but he's just kind of drinking and just kind of drowning his sorrows, and Jenny's just basically telling him to get a job, because it's like, right, Benny's going to college and we need the money, we're not making enough off of your bar job. And she's like, either we sell the house, you get a new job, or I go back to working. Your choice. So he ends up calling up Sinclair, played by Corbin Burnson, which this is, I was about to say, like, this, because obviously the thing I'm best known for is Papa Spencer from Henry, from Psych. But I'll probably say, like, and obviously Henry's a good guy, so I'm like, trying to think, like, the one thing I know he was a kind of a douchebag in was American Gods. I forgot, he was a god of war or something, wasn't he? I know, like, his whole thing was like ammo and stuff like that, like guns and stuff, but I couldn't remember what, like, he was necessarily god of. He was kind of almost like a warmongering god, but I can't remember his exact, but that's probably, like, I think that's the most recent thing I'd seen him in a couple years ago. I don't know if I've seen him in any, I'm not saying he hasn't done anything since, but I want to say that might be, I don't know. Either way, obviously, just from the teaser alone, and that opening with him, his introduction, you're like, oh, cool. He's definitely a piece of shit. And you're like, yep, okay. And of course, pieces of shit attract pieces of shit, right? So now Jackie's working with him because Sinclair offers him, like, a security job. It turns out he used to be a part of the Bureau until he got ousted by, like, it was somebody he punched in the jaw or something like that and ended up losing his career for it. But it's kind of like, it all worked out in the end. Interestingly enough, his wife Letitia is played by Joanne Kelly, and I was like, hey, Micah from Warehouse 13. I still never finished Warehouse 13. I need to rewatch it. It's been so long. I need to rewatch it and finish it. But putting all those tangents aside, Jackie's kind of feeling himself now that he's got a job, and it puts him in a powerful position. He kind of feels like he's on top of the world again. And I love that she's like, oh, you miss being a cop. He's like, no, I don't at all. She's like, oh, good thing you got your first lie out of the first lie out of the way for the day. So I was like, oh, okay. And it's like, right, he does miss it. He likes that power and position. Also, he's such an asshole that Karen Shimizu thing of, like, yeah, when they rolled up at her place, so this must be an accident. And then Jackie's over there laughing in the car. I'm like, you piece of shit. And he made sure to drive by slow and wave to her like, oh, I want you to know it was me, fucking Shimizu. I'm like, dude, that's such a petty. I was like, ooh, I actually love how petty you are. I mean, Jackie's always been petty. I wouldn't say that the first time he's gotten back at her or like done anything like that to get back at her, or has he like screwed with her in other small ways that she's just not aware of. But that was just that's just like the most petty thing ever. But going back to Jackie, obviously his introduction to the family and Victoria, who's kind of a dick. But then I also think that's kind of interesting because I'm like, part of me wonders is like, because I'm sure there's a parallel you can make between this family and Jackie's family. I think that's going to end up being like the a big through line this time, because obviously it's like, well, all that like all the nasty corrupt stuff that Sinclair's up to, which yeah, Jackie was up to some nasty shady stuff too, but they're not nasty to the extent like, yeah, Jackie like partied hard and like cheated on Jenny, but it was never a situation of like him doing what Sinclair did, like raping someone who was unconscious. And the fact is that Letitia's like aware of it and just kind of like helps with that to some extent. I guess it's just whatever that relationship is. I don't know. Just from what we've seen in the trailers, I mean, even Sinclair was like, "Oh, has she flirted with you yet?" And Jackie was like, "What? No, she hasn't." It's like, "No, it's fine. You're definitely her type." They have that type of relationship where it's like we're together, but we can kind of screw whoever we want to type of situation. And it's like she's kind of her being okay, and in fact helping cover stuff up just kind of makes her complicit in everything that he does. But obviously, like her and Jackie are going to get a little tangled up over the course of the season, but also comparing like Victoria to Benny, like Benny was very rebellious in the first season, and it seems like Victoria's kind of like that herself. So like I said, it feels like you can make a lot of direct parallels to this family. I mean, just like once again, Letitia's no saint. I feel like Jenny has her issues, but I don't think anything like nothing like like her issues are just a lot of internalized stuff like that she has to deal with when it comes to her own father, when her relationship, everything with like her mom and everything. But Janie's a good person, whereas Letitia, at the very least, like I said, she's copacetic with all of this, and she's along with everything that Sinclair is doing. So it kind of shows you like, right, you're not the best person, and there might be something even deeper to that. Like maybe she's even a worse person than we kind of perceive. Doesn't show her in the best light. But Jackie kind of calling Victoria out for like her making up that story, because it did seem like, right, she's like, he's pushing her, but she's also like pushing back, being like, oh, like you're doing those tactics of asking me the same question like my dad would, just to try to catch me lying. Whereas Jackie believes she was lying, because he was like, oh, did you go to a bar or something? Like, what are you like covering up that you don't want your dad to know? She might have actually been telling the truth, but Jackie probably just assumes the worst. But he tells that story of like the kid he knew next door back when he was younger called Dick Whore. He's like, now with a name like that, I don't know why his parents decided to name him Dick. But it's like, oh yeah, and that kid must have turned out right because he was a latchkey kid, kind of had so much freedom. It's like, oh yeah, and he was he grew up okay. It's like, no, he kind of got drunk and fell out the window and died. But it's like, the point is, his point was, whether you love a child or whether you kind of like give them free reign, like you can't control who they're going to be. They're going to be who they're going to be. All you can do is try your best, like to be there to catch them when they fall. And he's like, with Victoria, I'm going to be there to catch her when she falls, no matter what. And obviously, Jackie, a lot of that's coming from like, being a father, but specifically because of Benny's situation. Like he wants to be there to help her in case she falls, and I think that like that fatherly instinct in him, like when it comes to Benny, like he wants to do the same thing for Victoria, because maybe he sees the parallels between Victoria and who Benny was, especially in season 1, kind of like the rebellious person she was. Then obviously there's the whole thing with Dominique. She can't remember what happened. She's like, did I sleep here? And obviously Letitia tells Sinclair about Dominique asking questions, so he goes over to, and it's like, oh, let's have some wine. And he's like, yeah, you were having a fantasy, because she's like, no, when I woke up, it felt like, I'd been with someone. And he's like, oh no, I'm a happily married man. Letitia told me that you probably had like a crush on me. She immediately recognized that, but I'm a happily married man. Obviously your crush on me is what happened. She's like, yeah, it must be. But when she calls up Victoria, she's like, I remember what happened. She's like, I'm sorry. And she started blaming herself, because she's like, I didn't do anything. It's like, you were taken advantage of, but she kind of internalized a lot of that. I thought this was going to turn into like a pregnancy situation, that she was going to get pregnant by Sinclair, because we don't know if he was wearing protection or not. So like, I thought that's where that was going to go, and maybe she ends up finding it. It's only, well, who knows if, I don't know if this is the first time that's happened, sadly, you know? I mean, I doubt Dominique's the first girl, but like, just, you know, predatory behavior like that doesn't just come out of nowhere. It's probably been there for a while. Who knows who else might, but my thing is, I was saying, like, I don't know if it's the first time with Dominique, so that ends up in that, like, that storyline, that whole storyline, you're like, oh, it's already nasty and slimy in the first episode, you know it's just going to get worse and worse as the season progresses. Especially with Jackie in the middle of it, because it's like, right, he's the type of guy, like, right, you buy his silence. It's like, right, Victoria eventually confronts her dad about everything, and then Jackie's told to leave by Letitia, and it's like, right, she even said, like, right, is Jackie someone that can be trusted? And now it's like, right, you're kind of potentially in the middle of our family secret, so we want to make sure that you can be trusted. So it's going to be interesting to see where things kind of go on that front. On the other side of things, we have everything with DeCourcy. Obviously, guy's running for attorney general, and he wants, he's like, yeah, and basically when I leave, I'm going to put you in a position where you could basically take over my job for the next 8 months. You rack up some good stuff, and that puts you in a position where you can kind of like put yourself in a great position to next year have the job guaranteed. It's going to be 100% yours rather than you just filling in my seat when I'm gone. But there's competition between him and another ADA that he brought in called Blair, kind of pitting them against each other. So, of course, he's got to deal with that. Plus, his dad, played by Ernie Hudson. I feel like I might have seen some casting about this season. Maybe I'm misremembering. Either way, I'm like, it's freaking Ernie Hudson. I don't know what it is. Especially this role in particular, like, I don't know, kind of reminds me of my own dad to some extent. I don't know, just something about his face kind of, like, I don't think my dad and Ernie Hudson look alike, but for whatever reason, in my head, it just, like, seeing him like that just kind of reminded me of my own dad. Maybe it's because I haven't seen him in a while, and that started kind of kicking in around my head or something. I don't know. Either way, which is, it's sad to know, because he went home because his dad had passed out. Turns out his dad has pancreatic cancer, but he doesn't want to fight it. And finding out, like, oh, like, for DeCourcy, like, it doesn't make sense for him. It's like when mom got sick from cancer, dad wanted her to fight, and you know he was all about her putting up a fight, but now that it's his turn, he doesn't want to fight. And him and his brother have a disagreement about like what they want to do. His brother Louis wants to just like, yeah, let dad go out his way. And it's like, but also like Louis like, I'm the one that's been here by dad's side. You're the one that kind of left to do your own thing. Like you don't get to come back home and be the one to take charge. But for DeCourcy, it's like, Dad, I know he still has fight in him, and I don't want him giving up when obviously there's a fighter inside of him. But the moment DeCourcy tries to bring a doctor over, he wants nothing to do with it. So maybe that's also because Siobhan was like, yeah, he didn't come see me when I was in the hospital or like about the miscarriage and stuff. So the question then becomes like, right, was he dealing with all this? Because I mean, obviously he's not going through chemo, but maybe that's why like he can't travel much because of this. Because Louis himself only found out like yesterday after like their dad had passed out, and of course is only about hearing about it now. So maybe that has to do with it. I mean, Siobhan's very clear and like, yeah. He's like, because of course is like, oh, I know you don't like your dad. She's like, oh, not unless that's code for your dad doesn't like me. Like it does seem like he has issues, and I don't know why. I don't know whether it's like from the family she's from. Does he feel like, oh, it's like, oh, you're with a woman that's like thinks she's better than us, like because she comes from a very like high-powered position, like obviously like her family's legacy and stuff, and who her mom is, and I don't know if they ever really went into what her dad does. We've met her dad, but I don't remember. No, that wasn't. No, it's her stepfather. I don't remember because I don't remember if we find out what he does. Maybe we did, and I'm just not remembering. But like, I don't know if that is. I'm curious, like, because I don't remember them ever. It's been a little while, so I don't know. Maybe they did explain why Siobhan and DeCourcy's dad don't get along. Like I said, I just get the feeling like it might be a thing of like, oh, you think you're better than us. Like he might be projecting that, but we'll see. Which, speaking of Siobhan, she's taking on a new case because basically a construction site, one of its workers got impaled by a rod and he's alive, but like workers' comp isn't going to be enough to support that family with the medical expenses. The only person, it seems like it's the father, the son, and like the father's sister. And it's like, right, she's like, I don't have enough money. I could barely scrape by with my own paychecks. I don't have enough to take care of all of this. So Siobhan wants to fight for them. And when she's at the construction site, you see that moment, and just like with all the loud noises and stuff, it kind of triggered her, and she touches her gunshot wound. You're like, oh man. Like, obviously it's like, oh, the PTSD of that you're not going to get over. I mean, even to the point DeCourcy keeps a gun. He's like, I'm not going to get caught off guard again, which obviously for Siobhan, she has feelings about it in the sense of, well, one, she completely understands, but also being around a gun after, having survived gun violence, I think, it's going to make you a little uneasy around guns. The loud noises would kind of trigger like a panic attack in her, like the way it did, like the PTSD, like I was mentioning earlier. So seeing how Siobhan navigates that along with this case, because this is a juggernaut case, you're going after a large, I think, corporation. I also love the dig sign. What was it? Rome wasn't built in a day. If it was, we'd hire their contractor or something like that. Other things that went down. Obviously, the cop that killed Anton is getting grilled by Shimizu, and she's like, right, you have two choices. 15 years, or we'll cut a deal to be 15 years. If not, you're getting life in prison, which prison in general, 15 or life, not a good place to be a cop. Either amount of time will suck for you because you probably won't survive long. But he also tried to define, like, it's like, no, like, you're, the cop that was with you, like, he made it pretty clear that you executed Anton. And even, she's like, we don't even need that. Like, the evidence proves, like, his back was turned to you when you shot him. You killed him. And it's like, that guy was firing at us. And it's like, yeah, there's also been other racial complaints. And he's like, hey, I'm not a racist. It's like, yeah, I got super aggro about that. But sadly, a home dude, what's his name, Wallace, ended up getting shot. I figured it was that damn cop because, like, when he was shooting, because I figured, like, with the whole talk about it's that literal cop thing of, like, man, one more day to retirement and then you die. Like, that's the cliche. Like, the moment he started talking about his baby, I'm like, okay, you're gonna end up dead. And I figured that'd have some impact on that cop's, because he was the witness. He's the one that's like, his testimony was the one that kind of was an indictment against that cop. So I'm like, yeah, that's probably going to be an issue. Him getting killed. It still works out, but it's still like, even DeCourcy later on was like, no, like, his testimony would be, a live testimony is better than a testimony on paper. But the moment that cop was shooting, you see his gun kind of turn to the right a little bit. So the moment it was all said and done, I was like, damn, that cop got killed. And then lo and behold, who's like right behind them? I'm like, it's got to be that guy, right? There's no way that guy shot him, because it was a headshot too. And they even look in the forensics, and I'm like, what? How the fuck did that guy not think how did he think he'd get away with that? I mean, it's like, did you not think they're going to run ballistics? Maybe he thought, like, oh, they just assumed the bullets from that. His defense is like, oh, the bullet must have ricocheted or something. But for Casey, it's like, and the sucky thing is, the guy doesn't get fired. He just gets, like resigned to desk duty, because I think it's like, right, there's already so much issue with that unit. You throw in another cop killing another cop. It's just like, probably trying to keep that as low-key as possible. So, because he's not getting arrested, because I think that'd be too much of an issue, and everyone wants to keep that low key. It's like, you killed him because it's like, right, he's that blue veil of, like, right, you turned on another cop, especially probably in his mind, like, for someone like Anton, like, we're getting justice for I guarantee you the words that probably come out of its mouth for a gang-banging piece of shit like Anton. It's like, yeah, Anton was fucked up, but he didn't deserve to catch a bullet like that. He didn't deserve, But I guess the argument could be that's karma just coming back after everything him and his brother went. I mean, that sucks. Like, we won't probably catch up with her at all, but, like, everything that Grace lost last season, that's actually really heartbreaking, She didn't help certain things in certain regards, but obviously a lot of that was happening underneath without her knowledge, but still, it's just like, no one, like, once again, no parent should have to die before their child. I mean, no child should have to die before their parents. Sorry, flip that, Either way, because of that, you're just like, right, this is probably going to hinder that, and that cop is probably going to get off because there's no because I think sometimes the law could be in that weird spot where it's like, right, the person that's supposed to be, like, testifying against you, they're not alive, and you don't have, like, what's the law? It's like, you don't have the opportunity to, it's not a law, but maybe it's like just lawyer loopholes of, like, you won't have his defense, his lawyer won't have an opportunity to cross-examine him, so it kind of makes things unfair. We just have to go with his words and accept it, and it be an indictment against my client. I think that could be that territory where this cop could end up getting off. Yes, the evidence is there, but he's probably not going to get life like he could have gotten. Now they probably will. He'll probably end up accepting the 15 years. Once again, now that this is happening, like, who knows what was signed and what was agreed upon already. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. Then you have everything with Jenny, obviously trying to, decide what she's going to do to help out. So she ends up helping out with Suze at the, they're like, they're doing meals and they're just helping out people because, like, her daughter had come out to her, and it's like, right, to support, like, this, place that, like, helps with AIDS and stuff like that. So, like, Jenny's helping out in that regard too. And lo and behold, runs into the priest from last season, which I'm sure, like, well, things are kind of awkward considering everything that, well, Jackie kind of paying you off last season, plus everything she kind of got mixed up in the middle of last season. That's God, I don't even remember her name. The lady she invited to her house, and then it turns out, like, oh, she's kind of part of something back in Ireland that's not so savory. So because Jackie covered that up for her, like, covered up any involvement there, but that could still come back to bite Jenny in the ass this season. We'll see. But other than that, like, her and the priest, because even he's questioning his priesthood, like, he kind of thinks about walking away from it, considering everything that I think kind of went down last season. But it's like, right, he talks to Jenny about everything with her father, and it's like, oh, making peace with him, and it's like, should she make peace with her father? Because it's like, right, you can't do anything, you can't talk to a ghost. He's like, unless you're Demi Moore, and I was like, wait, what? I was like, oh, right, I was like, for one, that I think that's always going to be a timeless reference, but also it's an even more pertinent reference because this is the 90s, so, Ghost and everything, so, right. But I'm interested to see where things kind of go on that front. Will Jenny get any justice when it comes to everything with her father? Will she try and make peace with him? I have no idea. I'm interested. he didn't want to see her last season. Like, it makes you wonder, like, his girlfriend or whoever that was with him. I'm like, what story has he told? Like, and she's probably taking his side on things. Like, what does he say? Like, oh, my daughter, she was a liar about everything that happened between. Like, I don't know what stories he's been telling or what stories he's been telling himself about what he's done. So we'll see how that ultimately ends up turning out. Obviously, it's just the start of the season. In City on a Hill fashion, you can expect things to really start. The Hornets' Nest is really getting kicked and jump-started as the season progresses. I'm curious to see how things are going to play out over the course of this season. Obviously, like always, so many interesting plot threads and what they kind of end up being and how they all play out is definitely going to be interesting to see where this season takes us as a whole. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.